Okay, once you have your clay centered, the next thing you're going to need to do is push down into it far enough that you're not leaving clay at the base, but not so far that you push through it or push so far that the base is too thin. So I like to do this with a couple of fingers. A lot of people use also, I see a lot of people using their thumb. I'm not a big fan of using my thumb to open up clay. I usually do it with, I'm right-handed again, so my middle finger, and depending on the size of the clay, I'll use a couple of these fingers or even my index finger too. One note for here is stay directly in the center, push down directly towards the center, of course. Make it a smooth motion and don't hesitate. Another thing is when you're doing a lot of things, whether it's trimming or pulling a wall, or once you're ready to push down into this clay, don't do it with one hand. Do it with the stability of both hands by supporting them together. So push your hands together, kind of fix them together, whatever feels comfortable for you. And when you're ready, I guess I go index finger. I never really have thought through this, but I go index finger to center of this finger, and I actually push down with both of them. And try not so much to, you don't want to dig the clay out, right? You don't want to remove the clay as much as you want to compress it. So over time, also, when you do get down to the right depth, over time you'll learn how to judge based off of the height of the wheel and the height of the clay based off of perspective, just from looking at it and feeling it. But when you first start learning this, get down to where you think is good and pull directly out towards 3 o'clock. That's how you're going to open the base of that wheel, okay? Once you do that, of course, you're always, usually you'll have to give a couple extra passes like this back and forth just to get a nice, smooth, level base. So at first, just really cut down, cut across, and then smooth out a couple times after. One thing that's always recommended, and I never did this too much because I'd rather not just risk a crack or a hole in the base of whatever I'm making, but one way, especially if you're practicing and you don't plan on keeping it, one thing you can do to measure if you're not too far up or down, is you can take your finger with this pin tool right here and push it down to the bat, and then move your finger down to the tip of this clay, or to the top surface of the clay, and then pull directly out. So you'll see we still have like about an inch here, so it still is a little bit thick. So if you want to, I can give it one more pass. And it's also too, you can keep it with a piece like this or whatever I'm doing. I might, if it's a vase and I want to give it a nice tall foot ring, maybe I'll leave a little extra down there so I can trim it out. It's always better to leave a little bit extra and trim it out than it is to push down too much and make it too thin and then somehow try to save it. Once you push it too thin, you're pretty doomed. So you can always do a little bit at a time and then check. And that should seal up the hole that you created with the pin head, with the pin tool too. So, and you can fiddle all day with that, but get to where you like it. Now once I have it here, now this is something I did over time. I learned over time. I probably didn't do this for the first year and a half that I threw on the wheel, but what I learned to do is when I get to this step is to give it one pass. What I do is I put 2 thumbs at about 12 o'clock, and I kind of just grip the whole piece. And almost kind of like you're coning up, but very steady. I push up towards 12 o'clock with my thumbs, and I kind of pull in with the palm of my hand and my fingers, and I just slide my hands up. Very steady. Slide it up, slide it up, slide it up. All the way. And slowly release. And you see that just sort of sets you up to pull your walls. It gets them still thick and still not thrown out, but they're still they're in a position where you can smoothly in one motion pull them up with a consistent pressure too. Okay, so once you get here, you're ready to pull your walls up, and I'll do more videos in the future. you know, it's very, once you get to this point, the wall throwing is a little bit of an intricate part because the clay is now open, so the integrity, instead of being, you know, the whole clump of clay, now it's this inch of clay you have right here, 3/4 of an inch of clay, whatever that is. And you're gonna need a little bit more of a delicate touch, and there's a special technique to get the clay sliding just right through your fingers and moving upwards, okay? So one thing to keep in mind, pull straight up towards the ceiling when you're doing this. Get your fingers to where you need them and get to the point where you feel the clay sliding in between your fingers correctly, and then once you feel that happening, pull directly, not in towards yourself or not up and out. Make sure you're pulling directly up along the surface of the clay, whatever direction you want the clay to go, in or out, and that your hands are moving up towards the ceiling, directly up, okay? When you are to this point and you are ready, what you're gonna do is you're gonna put, using your middle finger, okay, you're gonna start with this finger at the base of the inside of the clay, and you're going to push out, all right? With this hand at the same time, you want this outside finger to be slightly underneath, so the clay is going to come up and pass through your two fingers here, and as this finger on the inside expands the clay out and stretches it out, the finger underneath pushes it straight up towards the ceiling, okay? So you're expanding and stretching the clay here, and you're pushing it straight up with your right hand. If you're right-handed, it'll be opposite. If you're on your left side, it'll be your right hand is pushing out and your left hand is pushing straight up towards the ceiling. So here we go. I'll talk through it as I do it here a little bit. This is the trickier part, so really take your time here when you first start. But at the same time, really get this clay moving out. One thing you'll do, and one thing I still do all the time, I notice too much, is you get too, your pressure's uneven. Either you're pushing too hard with your inside hand, moving in towards the wheel, and the shape of your cylinder is like this, it's concave, or you're pushing too hard, or you're not pulling up towards the ceiling, you're pulling up and out, and then you start getting open, your rims start expanding too much, okay? So once you get this wheel going, push out and start with this finger at the very base. Sometimes when you're beginning, you tend to start up here. You don't start expanding the clay until you get up here. You want to use all the clay at the base. Don't leave 30% of the entire ball of clay in the base. Use all of the clay at the base. So with this finger, start it against the wheel and bring it into your clay, and the other finger on the inside at the base, you're going to push out with the inside hand with your left hand until you see it start expanding out. When you see that, you'll feel it start sliding. And when you feel the expansion, you feel your right hand start pushing it up. Now, I'm not moving anything really. I'm just pulling my hands directly up towards the ceiling. Okay? And one thing you want to see is consistent throw lines in the clay. I wasn't very aggressive with that pull. Okay? Next pull, I'm going to be a little more aggressive here. So, right hand at the base on the wheel right here, left hand at the base on the inside. I'm going to push in with the right hand a little bit and push out with the left hand a little bit. Now see the clay expanding? Now it's really going. So now I'm going to bring my hand up. The more you let this clay expand out, the more you're going to stretch it out on the way up. Now as you can see, I was a little more aggressive with that pull, and it probably doubled maybe the distance that the first pull had. Okay, so I went out a little bit here. I'll go over collaring and what I'm about to do right now in some later videos, but you can also, if you do find your stuff coming out, there are ways to bring it back in to center, okay? Collaring and choking, those are called. But we'll give it one more pull here. So once your vessels start getting taller, you're going to have to start paying attention to the circumference right here, okay? Because you're going to need it to be larger for your hand to fit into. As you'll see, my hand is going to kind of expand it here. And then you also need to pay attention to the technique and the form and the angle that your arm and forearm are at when it comes in. You'll have to start elbow up. The taller this gets, the more your elbow is going to have to come up and down directly into the spot. But then same thing, bring it down to the very base. Use the clay at the base, push in at the very bottom, push out with the hand that's on the inside, And once you see that clay expanding, pull straight up towards the ceiling. Okay? Now, I'm not the greatest in the world when it comes to the first throw. Like, I can move the clay pretty well, but as you can see, this wasn't the most pretty cylinder. But the benefit of it is just move the clay, get the primary form complete, and don't worry about the details until the primary form is complete anyways. And then when you get here, you can take other tools. And you can correct some of the mistakes and some of the points of the form or cylinder that you don't like. You can get rid of, fix, redo, re-wet down. Maybe it's still a little wobbly at the top here, so just give it one more. We're pretty centered here, right? And the more fragile, or not fragile, but the more expanded and stretched out the clay is, like it is now compared to how it was when it was first in a very compressed ball. Slow the wheel down now. Okay? I mean, look at this. I'll let the wheel go. It's gonna. The longer you let this wheel fly, the more you're gonna see that wobble. It's gonna get worse and worse and worse. So the clay is delicate now when it's in this form. Slow the wheel down. Take your time. Have it move just fast enough for you to be able to control it at 100%. And you can refine form all day here.